something that I found really beautiful, and like even more so in the last few years, like more so than even then, is feeling really attached to like the ritual and like physical acts of Judaism, because those are not things that I left behind. Like those were things that I was doing, like whether rain or shine. Like, okay, maybe I'm not sitting and learning and like having this really lofty, intention about what I'm doing in the sukkah, but I'm in the sukkah, you know what I mean? And maybe I'm not like really meditating and thinking about mikvah before I go to mikvah, but like I'm in there, like I'm in the water, it's happening.
Hello there, I'm Tanya Khazanov, and you are listening to Human and Holy. Today's episode is a conversation with Chani Lipovenko, who is a writer, a creative, runs a weekly modern tradition magazine with her husband where she shares and writes original poetry based on the Parsha of the week. And today we speak about approaching the Seder from a really personal angle and seeing it and experiencing it as the personal process that it is inviting us to go on. Chani created a Haggadah companion 2 years ago after becoming a mother for the first time, when she was grappling with how to navigate her connection to the holidays, when she had previously spent so much time being intentional about showing up for them spiritually, and how to be present within the experiences, the mitzvahs, the actual rituals of each holiday to allow her to connect to the holidays in a new way now that she was coming at it from a different perspective and a different headspace. This is a really beautiful conversation, especially if you are in a busier season of your life and want to be able to tap into the holiday that is coming up, tap into Pesach, the Seder experience, even if it's not something that you naturally connect to or have in the past. There's some beautiful nuggets and teachings here about the deeper meaning of some of the steps of the Seder, as well as Chani's experience of transitioning from a more abstract relationship to Jewish holidays to something more visceral and really focused on the presence within the mitzvahs and rituals themselves. Enjoy. Chani, welcome to Human and Holy. I'm so delighted to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. Very surreal to be here.
I'm so excited. I'm excited to be talking about Pesach, to be talking about the Haggadah. You created a beautiful Haggadah companion that I saw last year, and I wanted to discuss and explore it with you. You created this way of being with the Haggadah and connecting with the Haggadah and going deeper and like really like journeying through the pages throughout the evening. So before we get started talking about tonight's topic, I would love if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Okay, so my name is Chani, Chani Lipovenko. I'm a wife and a mom. Those are like my, foremost identities right now. So I feel like that's how I always introduce myself. I'm also a writer. I share my writing on Substack and Instagram. I have a day job, but that's not like, who I am and my identity. But yeah, that's who I am. And I love Chassidus and I love creativity, all things creativity. And I try to, blend the two together as best as I can in the most like authentic way. So about the Haggadah companion. So my husband and I have a project called Modern Tradition. And my husband started it off when he was like before we were married. And it started off as like a weekly sort of Parsha newsletter. And then we continued it on together, like after we got married, and we put out a weekly Parsha newsletter, and we've, expanded it to more projects that, with our writing and about, we put together, this Haggadah companion. We also put together, like a magazine for Tishrei 2 years ago, and we want to do more stuff. So stuff like that, just, collaboration of like writing and Torah and artistry and poetry and all that stuff. So that's where this project came from. Yeah.
Love.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So you've been doing this on the weekly Parsha, and this was born of that, where you were like, okay, the holiday is coming up. Let's do something on the holiday of Pesach. So talk to me a little bit about entering into the holiday of Pesach. I know that this was born obviously of the project that you're doing, and also you were entering into Pesach and thinking, okay, how am I going to experience the Seder in a new way? So tell us a little bit about how you've experienced Seder in the past and how you hope to experience the Seder.
So I was actually thinking a lot about it today in preparation for this. And I was thinking how I am not like a Pesach girl. Like when I think about all the holidays or the holidays that I feel a connection to, like Pesach has never been it. And I don't know if it ever will be it. Like it just doesn't speak to me, And so it's funny to me that like I sat with Pesach and like created this project and actually like got into it, even though it's not something that like naturally like speaks to me. Like the holiday itself, like, I don't know, like the whole vibe of it, like all the cleaning and the matzah, and like, it's very like, it has a lot of like iconography. I feel like there's a lot there, like when you think about Pesach, but like just never spoke to me. So, 2 years ago, my husband and I were discussing like, okay, what are our Pesach plans? Like, where are we going? What are we doing? What family members are we going to? And we were discussing our Pesach plans, and we, one of the things that my husband brought up was, which I thought was a really good point that I had never thought about before, was like, why don't we go somewhere where we feel like the Seder will be like a Seder that we're aligned with and a Seder that we'll enjoy. Like a Seder is, it's a pretty big aspect of Pesach. It takes up 2 nights if you're out of Israel. And it's not just, something like on the back burner. Like it's something that like you actually have to think about. And I was like, oh, I totally would not have thought like to go somewhere for Pesach where I feel like I'll have a meaningful Seder or like a good Seder. And so then we started talking about like how for both of us, like the concept of a Seder has been something that we've always dreaded. It's something that we never felt connected to, and something that we always just like felt like was a drag, which is like sad to say, but like it's long. You're eating all this stuff and like you're doing all these things, and it's just like not something that we felt like was very like organic or something that was like personal. It was just like you do the steps and then you're done, and it's long. It's very long. And it's, you're reading from a book. You don't necessarily like feel these words are talking about me or talking to me. They're talking. And it's like shul basically, but with a lot of wine and a lot of matzah, and you're kind of stuck there. And that's not fun. And so we were talking about it, and we were like, what would be our ideal Seder? Because to us, like, we love hosting. We love bringing people together. We love having for bring-ins. Like, we love getting people together and like having a good vibe. You know what I mean? Like for me, it fills me up inside. It makes me all warm when I host a Shabbos meal and people are like, wow, like I felt, so good to be here. And like, just like the atmosphere was like holy and, fun and light. So we were like, what would our ideal Seder look like? And my husband said something so funny. He was like, I would want like lots of snacks, like just throughout the Seder, just like to be snacking. And I was like, I don't know if you could do that. Or he was also like, I would love to like just have a glass of wine and just like leisurely drink. And I'm like, I don't know if you're allowed to do that. And also like, no one probably wants to do that. But basically the conclusion we came to was we want our ideal Seder to look like and feel like a farbrengen, just like a bunch of people that you want to be around, your family, your friends. You're sitting, you're relaxing, you're leaning, and you're talking and you're exploring and you're delving into the story. And it's not like something stiff on the paper. It's something about you. It's something, it's a story that you can see yourself in. And like that, we love our parents a lot, but that was not something that we felt, was the way that we grew up, which is fine. A different Seder, different strokes for different folks. And that's like what we sort of like wanted to create. So we created this Seder, or this Haggadah companion, not to replace the Haggadah, but just sort of like some stories, some poems, some anecdotes, and some meditations to read along with your Haggadah. And the main goal of this Haggadah companion was really so that you can see yourself in the Haggadah, and also so that you can see the Haggadah as something that, relates to you. It's not a story about the Jews who were in Egypt. It's really a story about you. It's really a story that, you can be in the center of. So that was like the main kavanah, basically.
I love how you said that you identified that you wanted your Seder to feel like a farbrengen, where everyone's talking and exploring and processing the Haggadah and really like experiencing the Seder personally. And that contained Seder that you're describing, where Seder can feel like going to shul or going to synagogue, except that you're also eating here and there, by the way, occasionally eating. You're eating a lot, but you're eating occasionally. You're not eating often and
well, it's
early.
also not like filling or yummy. It's just like a lot of dry carbs and, mar.
Okay, I love the mar. I love the matzah. I'm going to be real with you. I love the karpas. Give me the potato, the onion and salt water. I love it. But I hear you. Like, you're not getting fed so fast. It really could feel almost like you're fasting and you're sitting through a lot. So coming at it from a totally different angle of like, I want to show up to the Seder where like I'm participating and I'm part of it. Like, love that intention. And I would love to hear how you moved from, okay, let's envision what our Seder could look like, which, by the way, just that, like just asking ourselves that question, huge. And then what did he do after that?
I think the thing that really like brought me into the project, and it sounds very self-centered, but as I was thinking about it today, I also came to the conclusion that like sometimes there are certain rituals and there are certain aspects of Judaism where like centering of the self is okay, and not only okay, but it's also like what you're called to do. Like it's okay, and I think it's a good thing to want to have like a transformative Seder, or to have a Seder where you feel like you personally, you know, felt something, or you personally felt like you had some sort of like, you know, something stirred you or something touched you. So that was something that I was trying to focus on, like sort of like taking away, like not taking away the story or taking away like the words of the Haggadah, but trying to like, I wrote it very much with myself in mind. Like, what do I want to hear right now? Like, what do I need to hear? What do I need to recognize within myself? What do I need to like, you know, come to terms with? And we had written it when our son was like a few months old. So I was like straight into motherhood and like really grappling with that identity and like, you know, trying to find me like in the motherhood, and trying to find me like in this new me who I didn't really recognize, or, you know, was very different to the life I had lived up until then. So I wrote it very much with the intention of trying to like bring out that like the self, you know, and make it something that someone is going to read and feel like, you know, this is talking about me, this is talking to me. I started, you know, trying to answer like the questions that I felt like I needed answering to. And it was actually it was an interesting process because, like I said, like I was straight, you know, new to motherhood. And, that was a kind of a difficult shift for me. I don't know who it's an easy shift for, but I definitely felt like it was a, you know, difficult shift. And one thing that was a little bit difficult for me, when it came to like my relationship with Judaism, was I always felt like a really strong calling before any Yom Tov to like do a lot of like hachana, to do a lot of like preparation. And I have like a really vivid memory of being in seminary in Svat and being like on a rooftop and being and sitting with one of my notebooks from seminary, from classes, and going through, it was before Purim, and going through my notes and looking at the notes from all the classes that I've had for the last month, learning all about Purim, and sort of like scouting out through the notes and trying to find like a kavana, something that I want to carry through my Purim, and just sort of like have this intention through Purim, and like that will be the thing I'm focusing on, and that's going to be the thing that like, you know, is going to make me have like a meaningful Purim. And I did that a lot, like before each Chag, and just like kind of sat there with my notes, or sat like and thought about like the kind of holiday I wanted to have. And that, you know, it wasn't really an option anymore. You know, less so once I became a mom. I didn't, you know, have the time or like the energy really to like bring myself. I didn't bring myself to that. Like I didn't feel like that spiritual stir. Like I need to get through I need to go into the holiday like feeling spiritually prepared. For me, it was more like I need to get through the holiday and like make sure I have enough formula and make sure that like I don't run out of diapers. And like it was very like, you know, detached from this like once very spiritually like, you know, like thirsty kind of like mentality that I had. So, you know, I found myself like going through each like Chag and sort of feeling like kind of like empty and feeling like it was lackluster and just not really feeling like there was much there. Like, okay, I'm doing the thing, but like I don't feel like I came prepared. Like I feel like I showed up to the party without like, you know, a costume. Like you just feel like you're not like in it. And that was one thing that I struggled with. And another thing that I was coming to like realize, and also something that I found really beautiful, and like even more so in the last few years, like more so than even then, is feeling really attached to like the ritual and like physical acts of Judaism, because those are not things that I left behind. Like those were things that I was doing, like whether rain or shine. Like, okay, maybe I'm not sitting and learning and like having this really lofty, intention about what I'm doing in the sukkah, but I'm in the sukkah. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm not like really meditating and thinking about mikvah before I go to mikvah, but like I'm in there, like I'm in the water, it's happening, And so that became like a really important part of like my Jewish practice, especially because those were the things that like I once thought were pretty like, kind of like, I found them a little bit like cheesy, you know what I mean? Like, okay, like we're doing all these rituals and it's just like do, but like, what about the feeling behind it? What about, thinking about what it actually means? And like, at that point, I wasn't really thinking about what it actually means because I was like on like 2 hours of sleep that night, but I was still doing the thing, you know what I mean? So to me, that became like a really important like aspect of like, my Judaism. And within the holidays, I was still, I'm still doing it, even if, I haven't like sit with it for a few months.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that message, Chani, and also that visual of you and Sfat sitting on the mountaintop, like really being super intentional about how you enter into Purim, which many people don't necessarily enter into that with spiritual intention. It's not Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. It's something that often gets sidesteps, spiritually speaking, for many people. So one of those holidays that most people are not spiritually preparing for, you're sitting there, you're really reflecting on how you could bring down the spiritual energy. And then what used to be so much about intention is now about showing up to the holiday and being like, I'm still here. Even if I'm on 2 hours of sleep, even if I didn't have time to study about this holiday, like I'm still here. I'm in the sukkah. I'm in the mikvah. I'm here.
Something else that I've sort of found like in the last like 2 years, because it's been such a funny shift for me because I really did feel like I need to go into every holiday with like this really big like banner over my head of like, this is what you're thinking about. This is what you should be focusing on. And like, if I wasn't, then like the holiday just like was passing me by. And that's something that, sort of inspired me about the Seder was that like, there's so much there. Like there's so much like to see, there's so much to touch. And like, if you're just looking at Pesach or the Seder as a painting, like there's just so much detail and there's so much texture and there's so much life. And even if I'm not, like sitting in that and like really contemplating what it means for me, like I trust that that intention is going to find me. And that's something that sort of came up for me like on Purim, like a few weeks ago. Another holiday, like the same holiday, but I didn't sit, with intention. Like the night before Purim, I'm like panicking and like trying to pack shalach manas, and like I made my son's Purim costume from scratch and he didn't wear it at all, but that's fine. Like, just trying to like do, get it all together. And then like Purim night, I went to hear Megillah with my son, who's 2.5, and I was sitting with like a few friends of mine, and my son, who's 2.5, was there with like some other kids, and I was at someone's house and she had put out like a bunch of toys for the kids to play with. And so my son was just really happy to be up past bedtime, and he's just like playing and like with all the babies, and like they're making so much noise and they're laughing and they're like running back and forth and like giggling. And I was not reading the Megillah. I was not on my phone. I was not reading it like in a booklet. I was just trying to like, make sure they weren't making too much noise and, running everywhere. And as I'm sitting there and hearing the Megillah being read, I was so struck for a moment by the scene of the Megillah being read, the story of someone who tried to, genocide all the Jews and try to wipe the Jews off the map. And here, thousands of years later, there are a bunch of Jewish babies running around the room, like making all this noise. And it was such like a full circle moment for me. And I was like, this is what Purim is for me right now. Like I'm seeing, like the survival of the Jewish people, and not just the survival, like, we're alive and we're living and we're thriving and we're growing and we're having kids and we're blooming. And that's what this is. Like we're hearing the story and these kids are like running around in circles. And that thought struck me. But what struck me like after that thought was how that was something that I felt like, especially like, especially in today's day when, we're going through what we're going through in Israel and world Jewry in general, like that thought came to me. And that like kavana, you could say, came to me. That inspiration came to me, but it just came like of its own, it came on its own. Like I didn't sit and contemplate. And that's something that I found not only, when it comes to holidays, but just in general. I've been trying to tap into this like version of myself within my Judaism that like the things will come to me. Like I'm open to it and it's going to come to me when it comes to me. And honestly, it feels so much more organic and it feels so much more real and it feels so much more magical than sitting on a hilltop or on a rooftop in Svat and like studying and trying to like cram the inspiration, like feel something. Like I'm not doing that. Like I'm open and I'm sitting with my kid and he's laughing and that is what washes over me. And that's what inspires me. And I know it sounds cliche and I know it sounds like, maybe like, I don't know, overdone, but like, and it's not like a magical touch. Like it's not like it always happens, but I do see that, that comes to me, that's been coming to me a lot more, in the last 2 years rather than, sitting in contemplation. I just am sort of opening myself up and like waiting for, like to receive it.
I think that's so beautiful. And what you're doing is embracing the season of life that you're in. And I think that when you're in that season of life with a small child, the only thing that you could do is have that openness. I've definitely experienced, like, I'm curious if you have done this like whiplash sometimes on Jewish holidays where I'm caring for my children and then like the baby's down for a nap, the like toddler is playing and it's Rosh Hashanah. And I'm like, oh, I could pray now. I could tap in. And it's this like really interesting experience of like, okay, I'm all in on this child rearing right now. And so I'm not really focusing so much on the energy of the day in the way that I might have previously or been able to. And now I have this like pocket of time. And when there is this enormous pressure to like jump into it, leap into it, to like immediately like leap out of your current experience and like jump into where everyone else is holding with the holiday versus what you're describing, which I think is so beautiful, which is there's an openness to the energy of the Yom Tif. And that if you are immersed in rearing small children, if you are with a 2.5-year-old on Purim night listening to the Megillah, and you just have that openness to the energy of the holiday versus that extreme, like the cramming is such a perfect way of saying it, like trying to cram in the spiritual moments or highs or inspiration or trying to get yourself to feel so intensely in those brief moments, we could really shut ourselves out. So the openness is like such a beautiful, gentle invitation. When you're a parent of small children, you don't need like more pressure, more to-dos, like more intense expectation of like what the holiday should look like.
Right. I've also tried to like shift my expectations, which is like so funny because like before every, Yantif or every Shabbos meal that I host, like I always think to myself, like just work smaller. Like it's okay. Like you don't have to like have such high expectations. And like my friends who will be hearing this will laugh because like I always like go way above and beyond. And like I always like, I kind of, lose the plot a little bit, like the Shabbos table has to be perfect. Then I'm like, that's not actually the point. But I think like lowering your expectations in a way of like, that's something that I personally struggled with after I had my son. Like I was trying to like recreate my motherless life just with the baby with me. Like, and that like doesn't really work. I mean, like it worked for a while, but then me and him were both like not happy and this doesn't work. And not every space is a baby friendly space, which I learned, the hard way. So don't bring an infant to a library, like things like that. So, so I think having to like shift in a way, I definitely relate to what you were saying about like having that pocket of time. That's been like every Yantif that I've had of having like nap time. And I'm like, okay, like the few minutes I have to myself, like I just want to like nap or I want to read or I just want to like talk to my friend. I don't feel this like call necessarily to like daven or say Tehillim. And I think like shifting my personal expectations for my own self of like, I'm not gonna, feel the same maybe like inspiration that I felt like in a time where I was sitting in shul or like I could really like focus on the holiday without anything else impeding my focus. But sort of shifting from like the quantitative like feeling into like the qualitative and just like leaning into things that like really feel right and really feel like, personal and really feel like they're coming from me. Like this Rosh Hashanah, I went to shul for like probably 20, 30 minutes just to hear shofar. And then like I went back to my in-laws where I was staying. And I feel bad saying this, but like, I don't really daven. I really should, but I don't. Sorry. That's the human part of the human and holy. Like, I unfortunately don't. I should get your Seder so that maybe I'll daven. I unfortunately, like, it's not something that like I really do on the daily. And I just felt like, I wouldn't say a guilt, but I just felt something in me like, okay, it's Rosh Hashanah. I should daven. So I opened a Seder, I said a few things. I said some Tehillim, and I just started like talking to Hashem, which when I do daven, I try to do like talk verbally, like in English. So I feel like it's really coming from me. And I just like started talking to Hashem about like all the things I want, all the things I need, all the things, that I feel like I'm looking for this year. And I just like start crying, and I was like really crying like a lot. And it just like, it was washing over me. It was washing through me. And I'm just like, I really felt it. And like, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, so this is the first day of the year, and I'm starting it off with like a really heartfelt, really genuine from my soul tefillah. And like, I'm happy about that. And I think that matters. And that's how I'm starting off my year. And it's also something that like, I can't say, is something that I do often. And that's something that like, I was like, sort of like as a trophy, like this matters. And maybe, I can't like line up all the times I've done this in the past, while, but this one matters. And like, hopefully like I'll grow from here, but like really shifting the focus on like the quantitative to the qualitative, and like, this matters. This is real. And yeah.
And by the way, like just to validate what you're saying, that when you do have a really small child, a toddler as you do, I also think like you find the care for yourself in these small moments. Like very often, if you could transform just 5 minutes to yourself into something that's truly generative and nourishing just as a human being. So certainly we can do the same thing in our spiritual pursuits and our connection to Hashem, that those 5 minutes could be really high quality in terms of connecting us to Hashem. And as long as we don't compare ourselves to like past versions of ourselves, and for sure you before becoming a mother, which was such a big transition for you. You're an artist, you're creative, you love studying. Like it's a very big shift to enter into the all immersive experience of motherhood.
Yeah. I wanted to add one more thing to like answer the previous question about like the process of like the writing the Haggadah companion. Part of like the process was trying to like create this Verbringen sort of template for our Seder, the ideal Seder that we would want to host and create. So a Seder where people share, but we're sharing sort of like as a Verbringen, we're sharing things from the heart. We're not necessarily just reading what the Haggadah says. We're sharing how we see ourselves in it and how, it relates to us. And one of the things that I found like frustration with when it came to the Seder, like as a kid, was like doing the same thing every year. Like we did this last year. We did, we ate the same matzah. We said the same brachas. Like we read the same passages. We do this every year, and it doesn't feel new. It doesn't feel like organic. It doesn't feel like something exciting because you're so like, you're kind of bored of it because you've done it so many times. So one of the things that, we wanted to like hone in on in creating this Haggadah companion was that, yes, you have the same Seder every year, but you're not the same every year. So you are going to bring something different to the Seder each year based on like what you're going through, or based on like the version of you that you are right now. And so we wanted to create like the prompts and the questions and the discussion questions, the meditations in the Haggadah to be sort of open-ended in a way that you can like fill in the blanks and you can like fill the space where you're at. And I was reading through it, like today in preparation for this, and I was reading through it and I was like, wow, different things are coming up for me right now than the things that were coming up for me last year and the year before. So that was something that we wanted to like really tap into, that like, yes, you have the same Seder every year, but you're not the same every year. So you're going to have a different experience. And like, also, like I said before, like being that open vessel and just sort of like being open to like what the Seder is gonna like, deliver for you. Like last year we had a friend of ours at the Seder, at our first Seder, and it was so special for us because he's a friend of ours who like, if we didn't invite him to our Seder, like he wouldn't have gone to a Seder. And so after that, I told my husband, like, do you realize like how special that is? Like we were like the conduit, like we were like, like the vessel that like, delivered the Seder to him. Like if it wasn't for us, he wouldn't have had a Seder, and that's really special. And I was so honored that like he was at our table last year before Pesach, I was in the grocery store with my son and like shopping for Pesach, and I saw these like little DIY like Seder plate kits for kids like decorate. So I bought one for my son, and I was like, okay, we'll just do it together, like something cute for him. He wasn't in school last year, so something that like, you know, he'll feel like it's Pesach. So when we got home, like I opened it and I saw that there was like 3 different DIY kits in this package. So I was like, okay, like he's gonna do one. And the first thought that like immediately came to me when I saw these like 2 DIY kits was I thought about Ariel and Kfir Bibas. That was like the first thing that came to my mind. Like 2 little Seder plates for 2 little kids who, you know, won't be decorating these, you know, doing any sort of crafts. And this was last year. So like we didn't know what had happened to them at that point, but I was really struck by that. And so I like decided like, okay, we're gonna like, I decorated this Seder plate with my son, and then the other 2 Seder plates, I wrote on them like Kfir Seder plate and Ariel Seder plate, and like me and my son decorated them together, and like I had them on our Seder table as like, you know, a reminder that like, you know, these are 2 Jews who I wish were able to, you know, engage in this sort of like fun and like light Seder and Pesach preparation. And that was something that on one hand, like was pretty emotional for me. Like I'm like, you know, kind of tearing up as like I'm coloring with my son. But at the same time, it was something that like I said before, like you bring a different version of yourself to every Seder. And last year at the Seder, the Bibas children and also like all the hostages were really on my mind because, you know, we talk a lot in the Seder about how we were slaves, we were in bondage, we were shackled, we were trapped. And like, that is a reality that unfortunately exists for Jews right now, which I don't know, like when in Jewish history, like that was as like prevalent, or like we can read these passages and think like, that is crazy that is something that we can unfortunately relate to because it's happening to other people. So the concept of, you know, freedom and the concept of slavery or bondage was like too real last Seder, and like in a very disturbing way. And one of the things that really, you know, like inspired me and I felt very, you know, empowered by, which like it's empowered me like throughout like, you know, the war and whenever I think about the hostages, but especially last Pesach at the Seder, was the concept that the soul can never be in exile and that the soul is never, you know, in Gullus. And that's something that, you know, that I just sort of like latched onto, that like, yes, the body, you know, is going through all this trauma, but like there's a part of you that like will never be touched and never be broken and can never be trapped down. And I'm very like theatrical, and like I said before, like I always think about like the iconography and like, you know, the physical like, you know, aspects of each holiday. And so I often like think about like the stories, and I think about like what was it like back in Egypt. You know, we say all these stories, but these are actually, you know, real people that like went through this, not as a story, as their real life. And what was it like to be trapped in Egypt and have this experience of literally being trapped and literally being like owning no agency, owning no freedom. And like, I wish, or I hope, and part of me like knows that there must have been some Jews who like, you know, had this mentality of like, I'm here, but like, I know that there's a part of me, or like, I have a trust that like, that transcends like my reality right now. And like, whenever I think about the concepts of like, you know, like your own personal Mitzrayim, the things that hold you back, like it sounds so silly, especially like, you know, in the context of like what, you know, the Jews, like our fellow Jews, like, you know, the hostages or our, you know, fellow Jews in Israel, like are going through. Like, it feels so silly to say like, okay, I have my own like personal Mitzrayim, I have my own struggles, but like I can overcome, versus like people who are actually going through like these crazy, like unworldly, horribly, you know, horrible things. I guess like awoken like my compassion, and also awoken like this, you know, unfortunate like experience in Jewish history that like, you know, unfortunately we've been through so much, like we're still here. But really like what I guess stirs me and inspires me is this concept that like there is a part of you that transcends, you know, that transcends your situation. For me and my little like, you know, everyday silly stuff, like even more so for people who, you know, are in things that we can't even imagine.
Powerful. And I think you highlighted very well what it means to bring our full selves to the Seder, and that we come to each Seder a new person, a new being. We've lived another year. Right now, what the Jewish people is experiencing, like bring that to the Seder and bring that new awareness and bring that pain and bring whatever it is that you're currently experiencing in your life, bring it to the Seder, bring yourself there and experience it as you, because that's really the journey that we're being invited on at the Seder. I would love if you could share any other pieces of the Seder. You spoke about how the body is in exile, but the soul is always free and always connected to Hashem. Or there's a piece of the person, a piece of the soul that's always free. I would love if you could share, are there any other teachings that you discovered on this path to like connecting more deeply to the Seder that you could share with us, that you connected with?
There was a few aspects that I really felt like, you know, spoke to me as I like explored and like sort of deep dived into the steps of the Seder. And one of them was when I was learning about karpas. So karpas is the step of the Seder when, you know, we dip the vegetables into the salt water. And one of the reasonings that behind why we do this is, you know, to sort of like get the children to ask questions and to sort of like get them, you know, like prompting those questions, like what's happening here. So that sort of like brought up for me personally this like idea of like asking questions. I've struggled with, you know, asking questions because I always feel like it's coming from like a negative place. There's like a voice in my head that says like, if I'm asking, then maybe I don't really believe it. Or if I'm asking, then like, maybe I think it's wrong and I'm trying to like do a gotcha moment. You know what I mean? Like, maybe that's why I'm asking. Maybe that's where the question is coming from. And I wish I could just like accept with perfect faith, like, oh, this, you want me to wear a wig on my head? Like, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm not going to think about it. Like, sign me up. And some things I'm doing that, you know, but in some things I just, you know, I have questions in me. And definitely as I've gotten older, it's shifted from a place of like, you know, antagonizing to like, just sort of like genuine curiosity. And I want to learn, I want to know. And I have sort of come to this like conclusion when it comes to my question asking, that when it comes to, you know, anything in Judaism, I believe that, you know, the Torah comes from Hashem. It comes from a place of pure goodness, pure essence, pure light. So I know that everything that comes from it, you know, is within that. It is good, it is light, and maybe I'm not experiencing it as that, but that's not necessarily a problem with like the source. It's more of a problem or more of like an adjustment that needs to happen like with my perception. And it means that I'm not understanding something. And I remember really vividly when I was engaged, there's a book, I think it's called Mazel Tov. I think it's like a book of like the Rebbe's letters, and maybe not letters, but like different like things from the Rebbe about the engagement and like newly married, like marriage period. And I was reading it when I was engaged, and there were just certain like things that just like rubbed me the wrong way, and certain like points that maybe like the Rebbe made that like, just like when I read it, I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. And like, it felt icky to like read words from the Rebbe and read words from, you know, that are, you know, like aligned with the Chabad, like Chassidus and Chabad mentality, that I just like fully didn't sit well with me. And I remember calling up my then fiance, now husband, and being like, I'm reading this book and it just feels weird. It just feels off. And like, I don't know how I feel about it. And like, we talked through it. And like, what came on the other side for me was like, okay, like I could ask questions. I could adjust like my perspective. I could see things through a new light. And like, I am allowed to ask questions. I'm allowed to not understand things at a first glance, and like trust that my faith can sustain questions, and trust that I can ask questions, and that my faith is strong enough to like hold that. And that's something that really came up for me, because I'm going to have questions, I think, the rest of my life. And I'm not perfect at all. And things don't always sit well with me, but I really want to know. And because I believe that it's aligned with me, who I really am, like in the core of my being. So sort of having that perspective shift of like welcoming the questions and being happy that like I have questions, and questions like it's like water for the plant of your faith. You know what I mean? Like it's growing, it's interesting, it's alive. It's not something that's just like sitting there and like, okay, I accept it, you know, and there is space for that. Like we should accept and we should do, you know, when you know, we're called to do that. But I think also like having, this like allowance that like questions are good, questions are healthy. And I know for sure everyone has like experienced that teacher or that mentor who like welcomes questions and doesn't see it as a threat and just like opens their arms and like allows it in and like answers. And I was really struck by that, like, you know, that concept of like welcoming questions. And I think it's really cool. Like we're doing something to elicit questions. Therefore, we see questions are good and we encourage questioning and we want questioning when it's coming from a place of like genuine understanding and love and wanting to grow in your relationship and making things as authentic and as truthful and coming from a place of like real self.
Beautiful. And I think that you said that you said that perfectly, that it doesn't just allow questions, it invites questions, it elicits questions. It's like supposed to spark those questions. So it's not just like giving that allowance, but it's actually inviting it and asking for it.
Right. And also like, you know, it's meant to prompt the children's questions, but I'm like, and also us, like we're at the Seder too. Like, let's ask, let's get into it. Like, you know, it's meant for the kids, but also like, let's feel that like childlike curiosity.
Yeah. Cause as you said, we've done the Seder every single year.
Right.
And we might feel at this point that we like know what's up. We know what's going to happen. We know what comes next.
Seder means order. So it's the Seder itself. It's like, I think of it as like steps, like going up like a staircase. It's all like the Seder itself is one like dance that like one step builds off of the next. And like you're going. And, you know, it's not like we're doing haphazard, random things. Like each step of the Seder is something that builds off of the last. And we wanted our Seder to be something fluid and something organic and not something that's like step 1, step 2, step 3. And that was something that was really important to us to like sort of, along with that desire to make it like a personal journey that you're going through personally and like what's it bringing up for you, we wanted to like bring out that fluidity and that like organic sort of a dance rather than like you're just going all over the place. So in the step of Yachatz, when we're building, when we're breaking the middle matzah, something that really came up strongly for me, and this was right after I had given birth a few months later. So this like idea was like fresh in my mind. And it's something that like came up for the first time in my life right after I'd given birth. And now it's been 2.5 years. And I still sort of like relate to it as it first came up. But I've also like seen it like sort of bleed into different areas of my life, was this concept of like brokenness versus wholeness. So I had my son via emergency C-section. And for months after my son was born, I had such a disturbance at the fact that my body had this mark on it, like this tear, this man-made wound that I wasn't born with. It just disturbed me so much, and like I could not get over it. Not even like the physical look of it, just like thinking about like my body was born into this world, you know, in a certain way, and now there's something on it that like I wasn't born with, and like it disturbed me so much. It really did. Yeah. And like this concept of like, okay, I was once whole and now I'm broken. Okay. Like I was once like good and now I'm bad. I was once this like, you know, okay, maybe my body's not perfect, but it was me and it was real and it was like whole, it was human. And now it's like, it's bearing something that's so unnatural. It's not like, you know, it's man-made. And that was something that it really did disturb me. And I like was obsessed over it. Like this concept of brokenness versus wholeness. I was whole and now I'm broken. And it also like that feeling of like a physical brokenness also bled into like, you know, a feeling of like an emotional brokenness. Like postpartum is not easy. Like it's not an easy time, you know, and I felt like there was these broken fragments of my life that I had lived up until then. I was 23. I wasn't, you know, I was I had lived, you know, and I just feel like this brokenness around me. And it really did disturb me. And I thought about it a lot. And it was actually like learning Basi Lagani by Good Shvat that I really sort of like came to like I felt like the idea came home for me that like sort of holding my brokenness and my wholeness together. Because if I really think about it, like what is wholeness? Wholeness to me, at least, is like welcoming in all those parts. And wholeness to me is holding all the things, you know, within you that you feel like are fragments or you feel are broken and saying like, it's okay. I believe that I'm expansive enough to hold all these things. You know, I believe I can be a vessel that can hold things that might contradict each other. And I believe that I can, you know, have a wound in my body or have a part of me that I feel like makes me broken, and I'm still not broken. I can contain brokenness, but I am not broken, you know? I can still be whole, and sort of holding those, you know, two like very like opposite ideas together, and also trying to shift my perspective from the way that I see myself to the way that Hashem sees me. And I know that, you know, the concept of Yichud Hashem, like everything around us, like everything is an extension. Everything is in essence, like just one with God. We exist within God. So therefore, like God doesn't see me with any differentiation from the way I was to the way I am now, you know, to anything. To him, it's all the same. It's all beauty. It's all godliness. It's all one garden. And so that's something that like I was really like in, and I was like in those ideas of like trying to like reconcile with feeling broken. And that like breaking of the matzah was so like, it was so like empowering to me, because we're not like breaking the matzah, then like goodbye matzah, we don't want you anymore. It's like we're breaking the matzah and she's still here and we still love her and she's still part of the Seder and she's still one with the Seder, and that brokenness can exist within the wholeness and it doesn't make it any less whole. And that, you know, I feel like that, you know, has related to like a lot of parts of my life, and I think that it definitely will relate to me for the rest of my life in different ways.
That's such a beautiful reflection to have while experiencing yachats, which I think often in our like lived experience of the Seder could be this like very quick, fleeting yachats. Like it comes and goes. Right. But really being able to like visualize ourselves holding the brokenness of our lives, the wholeness of our lives together, and to see how they're really one thing, and that the brokenness or, you know, the C-section scar that you described, which I think a lot of women experience, that feeling of like being wrecked by human hands, being touched and changed by human hands, like not by birth, is a really challenging thing to process. It's so real, and it's also a powerful metaphor for other, you know, human inflicted scars that we have on our bodies, psyches.
One thing that always stood out to me in the Pesach Seder as a kid was when we opened the door for Eliyahu and Nabi by Nirtza, because it's something like so magical and mystical. You're opening the door and like you don't see anyone there, but like it's something just like, you know, it's another part of the immersive experience of the Seder, like something you're doing physically with your body. And it was always like a fight, like who gets to open it? Who gets to open the door? And so one of you know, something that came up for me when exploring this idea of like opening the door and allowing Eliyahu and Nabi into your house was really like opening up a channel and opening up a vessel and like being a vessel for good to flow into my life, and like opening up and allowing that in and allowing miracles into my life and believing that I can see miracles in my life, and believing that I deserve good and God wants good for me and all these good things to flow within me. But it all starts with that like opening of the vessel. And I think like I probably said those words, opening of the vessel, like 10 times, or probably more during this recording, but it's something that I actually believe in. And like, it's something that I like, it's a very like physical action that you do. Like you're open, you are receptive, and you're accepting. And that to me is like expansiveness, which is like the whole concept of the Seder of going from like this like closed-mindedness and this narrowness and this constriction, which Mitzrayim represents, into this like openness, into this flow, into this expansiveness. And what does that mean to me? It means to me like surrendering to the belief that I can welcome good things into my life and that God wants good for me, that I can attract good into my life by simply just like opening that up, opening up that channel. And Pesach means like the mouth speaks. So like speaking that into reality, you know, like just something like tangible that I've experienced for myself. Like I was at a Heartbreak once on Hanukkah, and the speaker was talking about how she named her son Shmuel. Her name is Chani. She named her son Shmuel. And that was after like Shmuel Hanavi and like the story of Chana and Shmuel. And she was inspired because she didn't have children for a long time. And so that was like an inspiration for her. And I was so struck by that because at that time I had really wanted to have a baby. And like, you know, I was like, I feel like it's time. I want it to come. And I was so struck by that. And when I got home, I told my husband, like, okay, I kind of made a promise to Hashem that if we have a baby and it's a boy, I'm going to name him Shmuel. And he's like, okay, great, cool. And I didn't know it, but I was pregnant at that time. And I was so struck by that. Afterwards, like after I found out that I was pregnant and like knowing that I had made that like sort of promise to Hashem. And I really felt like that was an embodiment of like opening myself up for blessings, and like, thank God I saw blessings appear from that, like speaking miracles into reality. And so that's my hope for everyone at the Seder, that like you can leave the Seder feeling like, you know, it wasn't a book you were reading. It was the book of you, and you are in the book, and it's about you, and you can find yourself in it. And, you know, and not just find yourself in the actual words, like find what you need, you know, like I was saying about like finding like the intention within the holiday, like just finding, you know, finding what's speaking to you, and it's going to be different every time. And that's my hope for myself this Seder. And I know it's going to look different than it looked last year. And I'm really excited. Like it's like an open template. It's like, it's an empty table that I'm waiting to fill. And I'm really excited for that. And that's my hope for everyone, that we can like have this transformative experience. And, you know, seeing that this sense of like transformation, like it's not in the big moments, it's really like in those small moments. And for me personally, just like opening myself up and like seeing what's gonna come my way and what's gonna find me. I don't need to find it, it's gonna find me, and just like being ready and expansive.
I love closing with that visual of opening the door to Eliyahu Hanavi and opening that vessel, opening that channel, welcoming goodness into our lives. That's how we close the Seder, and it's a powerful move to make after experiencing the Seder, to be able to go and open up that door, and open that channel for blessing.
And it's funny because I wrote like in the Haggadah Companion, like the Alter Rebbe, it's not included in the Alter Rebbe's Seder. Like this is the conclusion of the Seder. Like the Alter Rebbe didn't include that. Like it's not a conclusion. Like the Seder is like ongoing. It's like a day. You know, it's a daily practice of like finding that inner freedom, finding that sense of inner geula, and I guess from like within to without, and vice versa. And I hope for myself and for everyone else is that it's like it becomes real, it becomes tangible, and not just like fluffy, nice words. And like it's an ongoing. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what this Seder brings, honestly.
That openness that you were describing. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Chani. This was such a joy.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you loved it. And if you did, don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating or review. Helps other people find the podcast, obviously uplifts us and shows us that you are loving and connecting to our work. You can find us on Instagram at Human and Holy. Follow us on YouTube. Videos come out every single Sunday morning. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen, as well as humanandholy.com. We love hearing from you, so reach out to us at info@humanandholy.com with reflections, guest recommendations, questions, things you'd love to hear more of. We truly love hearing from you, and your feedback fuels our conversations and the conversations that come in the future. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.
אלוקיי זכני נא בתורתך ובמצוותיך לחבר את נשמתי תמיד אליך מחבר